Albert Lee Seed is proud to support the Back to the Roots podcast. Like you, they value the one-on-one conversations with farmers and other agricultural professionals that you hear on this show. Albert Lee Seed helps organic and transitional farms with a full line of organic and non-GMO farm seed for corn, soybeans, forage and pasture, cover crops, and cereal grains. Check them out at alseed.com. That's alseed.com. You're listening to Back to the Roots podcast. This is Brian Wood, and along with Mike Klein, today we are at Dutch Acres Farm with Tineke Veldhuis and Eli Miller. And we really appreciate you guys sitting down with us. And basically, Tineke, we'll start with you. You come from Holland originally, and we just kind of wanted to hear your story of what brought you here to Richmond, Indiana, or Williamsburg, Indiana, just outside of Richmond, and to start a organic dairy farm. So why don't we start there?
Right. Well, we didn't actually come out to start an organic dairy farm. We came in 1999 because I was sent by Holland Colours, the company I worked for in Holland, to be the CEO of Holland Colours here in Richmond, Indiana. At that time, spouses were not allowed to work yet, so I had the job, and Ypke, my husband, of course, wanted to do something, and he always loved to work with animals, to be outside, and he really was looking forward not to have like a 9-to-5 job like he had in Holland. We bought a house with that in mind in Richmond, which had quite some acreage around it, like 22 acres, with the idea to have some sheep or horses or whatever. That didn't fly, actually. We got the permit from the city of Richmond, but our neighbors, when we went into a hearing, a city hearing, they didn't like that idea at all. Many of them actually were retired farmers, and they said, we just got away from the flies and all the critters, and now they will have animals again. So at that point, and that was in 2001, Ypke had already met the Miller family, and actually that's a bit of a story in itself. The house where we live, where I still live in Richmond, was a farm historically, and the farmer that lived there is my neighbor. They built a bungalow. They still owned some of the land that belonged to the farm. And when we met them, they were called the Turners. Ed Turner, he said, I just sold my farm in Williamsburg to an Amish family, to a guy named Sam Miller, and maybe you want to meet these. It's really interesting to see. So that is how we got to know Eli's dad and all the brothers and one sister. And that is also when Ypke kind of teamed up with Raymond, which is Eli's brother, and they started to work together. First to try to prepare the fields around the house for this prospected hobby farm. Then, when that didn't fly, and Ypke started to look out for another place, we found this here in Williamsburg, and started to convert that to organic. Then why organic? Yeah, I think that was always on our minds. We always tried to eat healthy, and we really liked the idea of not using any chemicals, etc. So that was really not even a point of discussion. That was automatic. That was what it was going to be. This was really a rundown old farm. There was a house that had squatters in it. Before we bought it, the fields fortunately had not been treat it with any chemicals anymore for that last year. So that is when we started to convert it and grow hay there. In 2002, when we bought this farm, we also incorporated Dutch Acres Farm. It's an LLC. And we got our first number of heifers and one bull, I think, in the end of 2004. And they were in the woods, as we call it. That's where they lived. And then in the beginning of 2004, we moved the barn from it is a big bank barn, which is here on the premises now, that was standing at our house in Richmond and didn't have any purpose there. So with Eli and Raymond and a lot of other help, we took down that barn completely and built it up again here. That was the spot where the old house in this place was, which we demolished. So it slowly got to a place where we could have the animals and start to get some income. That was mostly from hay. The fields were not organic certified yet. That happened in 2005. And we also got a first herd of cows that year. And in the end of 2005, the fields were certified organic. We went with Mosa for that. And actually, the idea was that we would supply milk to Traders Point in Indy. Ypke had worked with Traders Point for quite a while. He had helped them start their creamery. He got a guy from Holland who was making cheese and yogurt over. So they worked together, but that didn't work out in the end. And in the meantime, Ypke had gotten into contact with Organic Valley already. There were actually a couple of meetings here that were still at that time procurement meetings where they wanted as many people as possible to attract them to become members. That was the end of 2005. And then in the beginning of 2006, February, we were at the point that all the animals were also certified organic, and we started to ship to Organic Valley.
Mm-hmm. Was that the first time that Organic Valley was picking up milk, or was there already an established group of farmers?
No, we were the first farm actually in Wayne County that was on the Organic Valley farm. There was another, right now I don't know if they're all Wayne, but 16. I counted them.
Okay.
When we did our last.
Now, what was your involvement? Was Ypke basically setting up the farm and running the farm?
Yes.
You were still working at Holland Colours?
Correct.
And are you still there currently? Or?
No, you are right. It was Ypke who that became his job, because in the meantime also those rules changed that he could have a job and had a work permit here, and I continued to work for Holland Colours. In 2011, summer 2011, unfortunately, Ypke was diagnosed with colon cancer, and he lived for only 4 more months. He passed away January 2012. Well, and at that point, of course, you don't know what to do. The only thing I knew was don't make any hastily decisions. But because it was so much his dream, he always said, I don't want to go back to Holland. This is the best time of my life, and this is the best thing I've ever done in my life. So after a while, I thought I'd like to continue if I can. But of course, I'm not a farmer. And well, we talked, Eli and I talked, and Eli said, I'd like to continue. So then it was a deal. We were saying we are going to try and continue the farm, and we did that. I had a double job basically, and the job at Holland Colours asked a lot of travel. I spent a lot of time abroad, and it was also a very stressful job basically. So at some point I had to make the decision, and then I decided to retire. That was the end of 2015, by the 1st of January 2016, and become a full-time farmer. Everybody said, probably now you're going back to Holland. But that was exactly not what I wanted to do. I wanted to definitely stay here and try to keep this going and improve it, because that's really what amazes me. This farm, having started from scratch, how you have developed the soil and the animals. We've had, and Eli can talk about that also a little bit, we've had our struggles with the animals that we bought before we got to where we were actually about by the moment that Ypke passed. I always found it so... He never saw it the way it is now. He never saw it really work, all the hard work that he had put in, that it really resulted in something so beautiful. That came, and of course that were also the very good years for all of us, the 14, 15, 16 years. That was just awesome, and I always wished that he could have seen that. And now I'm talking a little bit from the economic standpoint as well, because he invested a lot of energy, everybody did, but also a lot of money in it. So that was really good to see that return coming in. And we've also, I think, grown enormously in how we almost automatically, it's in so much in our genes now to work do the daily things and see that it can be done without any chemicals, without antibiotics, and with just using your common sense. Now, that being said, that is all a lot that I owe the whole Miller family. Of course, Eli, he's always here, and we have one more employee. But the whole Miller family has always been very supportive. Eli's dad, and also the other brothers, Sammy and Raymond, who are organic valley farmers. We are all neighbors. We have a very nice area, actually. It's all organic farms connected. So that is really an awesome way of living for me now. I enjoy it very much, and I try to be as much of help as I can. Eli always says she pays the bills and we do the hard work. But it is really very, very rewarding.
What kind of work are you doing? Tractor work, milking, or?
I don't do anything of the hard work, as I said, of the physical work. I ran errands. I scratched the calves, and no, it's all the administrative work. It's I kind of do all the organic certification work, the dealings of buying stuff. Some of it a bit harder than the others, but that's mostly where I occupy myself with.
Well, and I'm sure, and speaking as a person that works with a lot of people that try and do it on their own, I'm sure Eli very, very much appreciates not having to do some of that paperwork. 'Cause you get on some of these farms and the paperwork is
a lot of work.
Yeah, lacking to say the least. But
I think you're right there. Eli is a very good record keeping, but he doesn't like it.
So going into where the farm is, you came on in what year, Eli? Because your brother Raymond was here the first couple of years?
Yes, Brother Raymond, he was here. So brought the cows in, some heifers in winter of '04, like Tineke said. And then in the spring of '05, we built the parlor. And by May of '05, we started milking cows. And like Tineke said, Raymond was working by Ypke's side from 2001 till then. He was involved at Dutch Acres till 2009, if I have it correct. Yeah, and then Raymond went on his own at his farm. He built his parlor and he put in about 30 head or so. But so like I said, them 9 years Raymond was helping here. And I didn't come on in the picture till 2004. Late summer of '04, we got married in fall of '04, and during that summer I was helping Raymond and Ypke put up hay on the farm here. Everything was in hay fields, 80 plus acres, before we had cattle. And I still have to chuckle sometimes. I'd usually come help them like Fridays or Saturdays when I'd be off my other work. And towards the end of the summer, Ypke kept bugging me about what I'm going to do after I marry. You know, if I'm going to continue carpenter work, or I got the picture right away what he's trying to do, because I'd overheard from Brother Raymond he wants to bring in cattle and start milking. And it never hit me, but once he started asking me, you know, about things, that he'd probably have a job for me by that winter. And I thought, oh, okay, well, gives me something to think about, what I want to do and how I want to do this. And yeah, Ypke just didn't let me go. So I joined them here at fall of 2004. I started here full time, and like I said, that winter we were busy building fences, and quick as the weather shaped up a bit, in mid-February I think we started digging footers for the parlor. So that took us about 3 months till we were ready to run cows through the parlor, and that's where we're at today. So after 15 years or so now, we're still hanging in there. So
How many are you milking today?
we are milking 84
Okay.
head of cattle today. So that's kind of the goal. Like Tineke said, you know, she takes care of the paperwork, so she handles the money. So we kind of got to stay in our shoes. But no, 85 is about where we like to keep it.
And is that where you started, or did you start small and then
We
grow?
started, see, we got a group of brown Swiss cows. That was like 50 head that we brought here. We started with them, and then we bought another herd in February of 2006. So the first this year of 2005, we milked about 50, 55-ish, and then by the winter of 2006, we brought in another herd of 110 head. So all in all, for about 3 years, we were milking about 120 head. And that really changed the picture. It was a lot of work. So at that time, my wife and Raymond's wife, there was 4 of us employees here, with 3 with the milking. But after 3 years, it was just too much. We didn't have enough acreage space to feed all that cattle. And Ypke, so after 3 years, he came one day shaking his head, and he said, we have to downsize. We're hauling in too much hay, you know, to keep everybody going. So like I said, that was for 3 years. And but it was, you know, see, it was something new for Ypke, you know, to do something like that, you know. He wasn't fully aware how much it takes to keep the cows milking and everything, and it was almost overwhelming. So after 3 years, we had to cut back. So then we went down to about 60 head for a year or so, and then we slowly come back up to 80, where we're at today. So, and that's kind of where we're keeping them, right around 80, 85.
Mm-hmm.
And when Ypke was here, and Tineke, you said that organic was kind of just not even thought, that was the only option. Was that your first exposure to organic, or was your family, first of all, did you grow up on a dairy farm?
Yes, I grew up on a dairy farm. That's all I know. From day one, I grew up on a farm, and I, like I said, I've done a few years carpenter work before I married, but that still was, I enjoyed it, but I still miss my cows, and so, yes, I grew up on a dairy farm. That's all I knew, is milking cows and playing in the shit, and getting dirty, and we were conventional. We moved into Indiana at winter of 97, and we came from originally in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And when we moved out as well, we were conventional. And it was, this was a new experience to me, to start a herd on organic. I read enough, and they had some meetings in the area. Paul Detloff, which he was a good retired veterinarian. He helped Organic Valley a lot and their farmers. And Detloff, he'd go 100 miles an hour on his meetings. And half of the time you couldn't keep up, but I learned a lot from Paul Detloff. And to this day, if I have a question or don't know what the issue is with the cow, or I'm not sure which way to turn to treat her, I'll call Paul Detloff. He done me a lot of good, being confident with myself, and it takes time, but anyway. But yes, this was a new experience, and I had a lot of head scratch in the first few years, but all in all, like I said, a lot of things, it takes patience, and you really gotta watch your animals. And quick as you get to jump on the issues, as quick as you're suspicious something's going on, it's easier to treat. And as we go on, like Tineke was saying, it just seemed as the health of the soil improved, the health of the cattle and everything improves with it. And Paul Detloff told us that many of times as well. But and it was kind of interesting to me. See, we were certified organic in January of 2006 at Dutch Acres. And then at the home farm, where Brother Sammy is now, Dad transitioned that in 2006 as well, I think. Yes. But it was amazing to me, after I married, in them 3-4 years, how quick Dad, well, maybe he was thinking earlier, but about a year after we were certified organic at Dutch Acres, he was about ready to be on the Organic Valley truck as well.
Was he kind of watching over the fence and seeing?
I think he was, yes, but I think a lot of it was working on it already anyway. Mm-hmm. I think him, Dad, and Ypke, I think, done a lot of talking with each other. I wasn't in the conversations, but I think those two, they kind of fed each other up, and But yeah, Dad was in the transition, which it takes 3 years to transition to organic, so Dad would have been 2 years in it already. Mm-hmm. So they might have started around about the same time, on everything. So yeah,
I think it's kind of interesting when a new farm starts up, how sometimes they grow really slow, other times they go big like you guys did, and then downsize. Each farm has to find that happy place.
Mm-hmm.
And,
exactly.
And when you talk about the soil health and where the farm is, like, all the fruits of his labor are now coming into fruition, and he unfortunately isn't here to see all the work that he put into. But I think it's really neat how you found your niche in the 80 to 85 range, and you had to be bigger and you had to be smaller to understand that was the place.
Exactly. To be. Yeah, that's like a fellow was here after we downsized a bit, and we were talking about it, and which it was a retired dairy farmer in the area as well. And then we were talking about it, and then I said, yeah, it just seemed you kind of got to find your balance, you know. We were up to 120, but that was too much, you know, for not more acreage than we had at the time. So, but yes.
So what were some of those learning curves for either of you, you know, hearing from Ypke, Tineke, or something you've seen in those early years of learning organic? I assume you were also learning grazing at that point. And then also, you know, just what you've done to get the soils to the point where they're at today.
Yes, it was a big learning curve, and like I said, we just kind of had to take a step at a time, and we started right away with the soils, slowly, you know, applying things like they needed it, you know, taking soil tests and things like that. I know the first few years we had quite a bit of cow health issues, you know, as feed issues and everything like that. But like I said earlier, as the soil improved, the cows just improved with it. So, yeah. So it's something, you know, like, yeah, you can easily kind of get sidetracked, you know. You're focusing on the cattle, but you got to keep focusing on the soils too. If you want improvements in your cows to do your best and everything, it's yeah. It just doesn't happen overnight. It's it
and
takes
there is
time.
no silver bullet.
No, exactly. No.
That's something you see a lot of farmers trying a whole bunch of different things and not sticking with a certain program and just believing that it'll eventually you know, work out. You know, you got to have some targeted things that you're doing, but then trying to speed up that process never works. It always usually is a waste of money.
There are no shortcuts.
Yeah. There's always somebody, you know, that wants to sell your products and things, but you kind of got to find your niche and try it. And, you know, it just, it takes a few years to see results. You know, they say every 3 years is good to take soil samples so you see if things are improving and things like that. So, you kind of got to find your niche and stick with it. And like Brian said here, you just don't want to be jumping all over the board. So
I think one thing that I find interesting when people first transition their herd to organics, their medicine cabinet has all these tinctures and all this stuff in there, and the longer they're organic, that starts shrinking and shrinking to just a couple of different items. You'll see the old containers still in there from 10 years ago, but it's just as the whole system, like your farm here, as this whole system starts working in harmony with each other, the problems just tend to kind of go away. There's still problems.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, it seems to improve, you know, as you go along and improve the soils and everything, you know. But like the last few years, you know, we had our weather pattern kind of played tricks on us a bit, just not as good quality feed and things. And then you kind of got to keep an eye on things, you know, that can influence on the animals as well, you know. But it's, nothing like we had the first few years.
So one thing I picked up on was brown Swiss. Was that just because there was a herd available, or was that something that, and do you still have brown Swiss today, or did you move away from that? Yes,
we still have a little bit in the herd, but we don't have any pure Swiss anymore. And that was a herd that Ypke always liked the Swiss. And like Tineke said, the plan at first was to sell the milk to Traders Point, but then the plan didn't hold out. But he had purchased the herd of brown Swiss already before we were fully milking, so that's why we got the brown Swiss. And so the brown Swiss, they're a little bit more dual purpose, and there's some, just like every breed of cow, there's some that can milk good, but one thing we saw was with the calves, they're just not as aggressive as the other breeds. So
Tineke, I want to go back to your transition from the CEO of, was it Holland Colours?
Correct.
To the CEO of a dairy farm.
Right.
Like, you would imagine those two are about as far apart as you could get. And what were the differences and what were the similarities? And which one do you like better, I guess?
Oh, that's a hard question. Who is listening all to this?
About 3 people.
No, for me, of course, the biggest transition and learning curve was to be a farmer suddenly, right? I have no farming background, of course. I knew what was going on, but was not really involved. And at first, probably, I wasn't so much thinking of being the CEO of Dutch Acres, but I really desperately tried to learn about the hay. Actually, the one big problem which was there right away was because Ypke was already pretty sick the last month, that we didn't have hay, and we had to get hay some way. And the stress and the, those are living animals. We have to do something. And fortunately, Eli had also made calls to Organic Valley, I think, and maybe Ypke had already done something. But that was so stressful that January, February, March, that we would not have enough feed. And I think that point for me was really, oh my, this is such a responsibility, but actually a little bit the same responsibility as a CEO of a company. If something bad happens, you're responsible for all those, in that case, people, families behind it. And here were all those animals, and also, of course, families and people, but with such a different way to solve that problem. And that for me was really, I hope I learned learned a lot. I've been thinking actually about that lately. I was, of course, at Holland Colours. It becomes kind of a routine, and you know the product very well. You know when you pull here, that happens. It's experience. I did it for 36 years. Wow. And then here you can say, okay, I'm a CEO, I know how to run a company. And in a way, of course, a farm is also a company. But the triggers are totally different. And as Eli said, you're so much more dependent on the weather, on whatever circumstances, something can happen. So yes, you can kind of manage it the same way, but the playing field is totally different. And for me, that was eye-opening. That was, and I think I like this a lot, although sometimes the challenges are really, really big ones, I think. And sometimes maybe with the company, of course, there's a lot of colleagues and a lot of other people. There were like 100 people that I can talk to every day. That is somewhat smaller. No, we sometimes feel, I think, no, we talk and then we say, well, do we know everything? How do we do the right things? That is also different. So the scale of it is different. But I like very much. Hopefully I do to contribute in my way to help work on those challenges. And it's not always easy. And Eli, probably you can also say that. It's not always easy because, again, I don't know. I still think I don't know everything about the real farming thing. And sometimes I come up with something I read, and I said, shall we do this? Shall we do that? And then they say, "Mwah." But at the same time, I think because I do it, there might be also a little bit of this why you start to think, maybe we should consider it. So I kind of like that that combination of and I think I can say that. Of course, there's a cultural difference, right? Eli is Amish, I'm not. I think we respect each other's views very much, but it goes further than that. It's kind of that we talked about balance earlier, right? I think we listen to each other and we take the good things from both sides, and it works. To my opinion, it works perfect.
Well, and I think you see it quite a bit. One of the things you said there was bringing a new perspective, and sometimes Eli might look at you a little cross-eyed, thinking, "What in the world is she talking about?" But you see it quite a bit when you have a dad that is on the farm for 35 years, and then the son comes in and they bring new ideas. It doesn't always have to happen that way. Just bringing a new set of eyes sometimes can really open up opportunities that may have never even been considered before, just because you get in your routine and you get in your way of doing things, and it works pretty well. But then somebody can say something that can change the direction for even more positive.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that you brought up that's really interesting is, and people don't understand, as the CEO of a company that is not weather related, you can plan your schedule for the next 2 weeks, and you can stick with that schedule, barring any major developments. But in farming, there is no long-term plan. It's a day-by-day, and haying season, it's a 2 or 3 day window here and a 2 or 3 day window here, and you can have the best plan in the world, and it decides to rain when there was nothing forecast, so that plan's shot. And it's the difficulties of weather, which I grew up on a farm, and then I worked construction, so my whole life until this job was dependent on the weather. So to me, it's just common sense. I think Kevin says it best. He said, you've got to have a plan before you can screw it up. and weather will do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the weather has a big impact. Like Mike said here, you can have a plan, but hey, you don't always hold out.
And in talking with Dennis Wood, he mentioned, this year the windows for haymaking were really small. That's why there's a lack of high quality hay available, simply because of continuous rain, or the windows were so small. Well, you can have the greatest seedings, everything perfect. If you don't get that window to make the hay at the right time, there goes the quality.
Right. Yeah, we had that for the last 2 years. The hay windows were pretty short, and it can get pretty stressful sometimes. You try to get your hay in the best quality, and then if the ground's just too sopping wet, yeah.
Have you done anything to mitigate some of those risks? Like, I don't know.
Yes, we have. Here back 2016, we bought a baler wrapper combo. It's what they call a uniwrap. Before that, we had an inline wrapper, and we'd have to bale the hay first, and then somebody'd have to go run after the bales, get them on the wrapper, and get them wrapped up. A lot of times since there's certainly 2 full-time employees, well, we have a part-timer whenever we need her. But anyway, if you don't have the labor force, or like a lot of kids, that are eligible or old enough, you're comfortable on the equipment. So if you're shy on labor, our hay wasn't quite as good quality as I was wanting to see. And finally, It just, every year, it'd just be so much. It'd be nothing new. I'd be out till 1, 2 o'clock getting the hay wrapped up. And it would have been baled for, anywhere from 5, 6 hours before I'd get it wrapped up. And we try to put all our hay up in baleage, but we put a little bit of dry hay in small squares for the calves in the hutches. They would eat baleage, but they're outside hutches, so about the weather, but the rain, so the hay don't mold as quick and things. But yeah, I had a lot of relief on stress on that after we got the Uniwrap, but it was a lot of money. And after, that was 2016, 16 and 17. By the end of them 2 years, I saw a big improvement on our hay quality forage tests and on the milk volume as well. So that told me, even just after the first year with that piece of equipment, it told me a lot right there, that it was worth the money. Yeah, maybe we didn't have all the money then, but it took a little arm twisting on Tineke's side, but we finally worked it out and we had it. And so, And now then 2018 and 19, of course, the weather had a big impact on us, so we just didn't quite get the quality forages due to the weather.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Now, does your wife work on the farm as well, Eli?
Yeah, she helps out some.
Mm-hmm.
She don't run no equipment, but she helps with the chores, with the milking and things like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What size parlor do you have?
We have a swing 16.
So, do you have any regrets that you decided to keep the farm going?
Not at all. Not at all. No, it has even become stronger. My conviction has become stronger that it was the right thing to do, and that this is just what it needs to be. The next thing is, of course, what are you going to do when you really can't work anymore? Well, I'm 66, so I have to think on what will happen with the farm. I definitely want to go on as long as I can, but I really hope that at some point we can find a solution on how to continue Dutch Acres Farm, because that is really what I would like to do, and what I will also try to help and contribute in doing in whatever way possible.
Mm-hmm. And I think I can say this, that Eli, with you being Amish, the transition plan on the farm, that complicates things a little bit, because you don't farm the farm with horses and the way you would if you owned the farm. The church probably wouldn't allow you to use the equipment that you do now.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's the only thing about it. To transition it over to my name there would be big changes. You know, yes. Yeah, it'd have to be all down to be switched over to horse equipment versus tractors and things.
Mm-hmm. And because we actually had that in a farm that I worked with, kind of the same scenario as here. His wife passed away, the owner's wife, and he decided to step away from the farm because he couldn't do it, and turned it over to the Amish guy that ran the farm. And all the drastic changes that were made, well, the infrastructure was built for 100 cows, and he had to go back to milking by hand. Mm-hmm. So he went from like top-end equipment, top-end facilities, to milking 15 cows by hand, because that's the old labor force he had, and he couldn't make a go of it. And it was really sad to see, because if there would have been some other transitional step in between, but everything happened so suddenly, and he was not in a position to keep it going like you had the opportunity. So I could see, going forward, that's something that needs to be planned and looked at in advance.
Yeah.
That's quite the extreme.
Yeah.
I know. He actually just sold his cows about 2.5 weeks ago.
Is that right?
Went from milking 100 to 120 Normandies to it was really sad to see, because it was a show farm. But I think he's going to do beef cattle now.
Okay.
So, he didn't have kids or anybody close neighbors that could help with the milking, and milking 15 cows by hand is.
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't think I'd do it.
That's a lot of work, by hand.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that just happened recently.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But he was probably. It was probably about a 3-year process from the big numbers to selling out, because at first he just kept it going, and then that caused some major problems.
Yeah.
So he put some of it away, and then it still caused problems. And
So he slowly. Yeah.
But once it was down to milking everything by hand is when it just kind of.
It just right. That's the thing I usually think about here. If I'd put it over my name, that's with the setup, the facilities, it wouldn't work for the Amish way of farming. Mm-hmm. So, like you're saying, Mike, it just he couldn't make a go of it. Yeah.
But I think it's really neat that you kept it going for Ypke. All the work that he put in, because I'm sure moving to the United States from Holland, just the move in itself probably wasn't the easiest thing to do. Mm-hmm. And you probably had never seen Amish people before you got here.
No, that's right.
So, and then you met Eli. Wow, that's a real step.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really neat story how some things are clearly meant to be. Mm-hmm. How it just everything kind of falls into place.
Yeah.
Do you have plans to do any like major changes on the farm as far as the operation, or are you kind of set? It's kind of you found your niche and you're gonna stick there? Because I always like to hear what farmers are scheming to do next.
As far as I can say, I don't. For the time, I don't see that we do really any changes, and although other employee says we ought to, in the future, we ought to look into putting up a calf barn for our calves. So I don't know when that happens or if it will. I don't know, but so we're always thinking, But like I said, as of now, the way things are the last few years, we're just probably going to try to keep going what we have here.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably more of a question for Tineke. What have you been reading lately that are going to be
leader? Yeah. There are a lot of nice things, of course, that you could do, and that's what I have maybe a little bit. We've talked about solar, and there's a lot of things, nice things that you could do these years, and now we're just a little tight, and we are sitting, holding on for now. But hopefully we will get a little bit more wiggle room at some point, and then I definitely think you always want to improve, not necessarily grow, not in size, but try to do things better. And like Eli says, when a calf barn would be a right thing to do, I definitely like to do those steps. We kind of have an agreement. Everything that is necessary, of course, but a little bit beyond that, if it is good for the animals, basically, that is what we do. Well, we don't compromise on anything there. So if there are developments that are in that direction, I'll be the first to consider those things, and I think we all are on that page that they come first.
If you are looking at building a calf barn, when I was in Scandinavia, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, they had some of the nicest calf barns that were set up in group housing, but they went from individual calf the first couple of days to really get it going, and then I tell you what, those barns, clearly not cheap, but it was really, really nice setup. And that's one thing that I've seen farmers that build calf barns with good ventilation, because especially in the Amish community, the older bank barns underneath, it's damp. There's not enough airflow, and people struggle with pneumonia.
Oh, we had that here first too. You know, the bank barn that we moved up from Richmond, from Tineke's house. We made, you know, just simple hutches, you know, pieces of plywood for the calves in there, and we had them in there the first 6 months or so. Once fall come in and the colder weather, we just scours and pneumonia. It was just like you're saying, Mike, too much damp and drafty under them old barns. Yeah. And those are not designed for calves. No.
I've yet to talk to a farmer that a couple years after he's built a calf barn, that's not said, why didn't I do this 5 to 10 years sooner? You know, just because when you have the first 6 months of that calf, if you give that calf every opportunity to develop, it's going to develop sooner and be a better cow for you. Because you really do get out of a cow what you put in as a calf and a heifer.
Yeah.
So. We've been pretty happy with the hutches we have. They have the outside access, and they're
in the summertime. You know, it's perfect form and everything, but we have these damp and temperatures up and down. In the winter, it just makes it a little harder to keep them, you know, healthy. And it's not severe, you know, but we got to stay on our toes with them, you know.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you guys sitting down with us and taking the time, and yeah, we hope, as the cows are watching us do our podcast here. So. But thanks a lot. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Back to the Roots podcast, brought to you by Albert Lee C.